Hey, it's John with Agile Off-Road, and we're going to do an install of the big brake kit on this INEOS Grenadier that's behind me. These are the big brake kits that we offer, that we partnered up with Alcon and Agile to put these together. Fairly simple install. The install should go fairly quick for folks that are pretty handy for doing this in their garage or even out in the driveway. Probably bleeding the brakes is your biggest hurdle that you got to do, but we've got some easy solutions for that. Let's dive right into it, okay? I'm gonna go step by step on the instructions. So I printed up a set of instructions, got my tools all laid out. Step one, get your Grenadier off the ground, take your wheels off. We've already done that. So we're using a lift here. You're doing this at home, make sure you're doing it in a safe manner, okay? So pay attention. First thing we're gonna do, T25, and we're gonna remove this upper bracket up here. Right now we're on the passenger side, so I'm gonna loosen these guys up. I love working on new vehicles. This thing has no dirt on it yet. We're gonna be reusing this hardware, so make sure you set in a safe spot. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the wheel speed sensor guard from here. So just unclip that, it's real simple. Reason is we're gonna remove this caliper and get it out of the way. We don't wanna pull it out of the way. If you needed to, you could probably remove it from up here. We're gonna avoid doing that. So I'm going to steer this puppy all the way full lock to the driver's side. And we're gonna come back here, we're gonna grab these 21s. Pretty tight. So, I'm doing these with hand tools. You can do them with an impact, which I usually would do. But I'm showing that you can do it without impacts. So once you remove that out of the way, you've removed the bolts out of there. We're gonna use one of these caliper hangers. We're gonna keep this out of the way. We're not gonna do anything with that for a bit. Next step, we're gonna remove the T45s. They're holding the rotor on. These are just like a bolt that holds it in place for assembly. So usually they're not super tight. Save our bolt because we're gonna be reusing that. Caliper might be on there a little bit tight. And you're gonna use your rubber mallet. I'm using a plastic one here. A lot of times there's a little bit of rust on there. So pop that off. We're gonna set that away. We are not gonna reuse that. And then what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna want to inspect this mounting surface area here. This Grenadier is fairly new, so it's pretty clean, but I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. There's actually Cosmoline on there. So I'm gonna clean off the Cosmoline, but normally we'll see rust in there. If you see rust, just grab yourself a wire brush, get in there and clean it out. Also pay good attention to the hub itself. So this is the hub, and the rotor is gonna sit on there hub centrically, so we wanna make sure that's nice and clean. So another thing you want to do is just where you're going to mount up the caliper bracket. Just give that a quick cleaning. Again, this Grenadier is pretty new. If you have any surface rust, anything on there, go ahead and remove that on these two surface areas here. So we're going to take these two bolts and put a little bit of Loctite on there. We don't need too much. I'm just going to put like a dab of blue on each one of them. These are going to get torqued down to 120 foot-pounds. So take out our torque wrench, make sure we're set to 120. Let's put this caliper bracket in place. Start those by hand, and then we'll just put them on lightly with the impact. And then we're going to torque these down to 120 foot-pounds. So our next step should be to put on the rotor, and then we're going to tighten down our little torques again. And that's going to get torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. So always confirm you got the right side rotor, and usually that's going to be designated by an R at the end of the part number. Sometimes there will be a rotational arrow on there, but if you don't see that rotational number, just make sure there's an R on it. And we're going to line up our slot with this threaded portion here. I'm going to take a little dab of Loctite, not much. This is just primarily for assembly. And tighten that guy down. Should be good to go now. That's 18 foot-pounds. So our next step is going to be to put on the caliper, and the caliper is going to have two fairly large Allens. Those are going to be torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. Put a little bit of Loctite on each one of those. Again, not too much. You don't need to go over the top with this. Loctite also works as a lubricant when you're tightening it down so that you get an accurate torque. Okay, this guy's gonna be kind of heavy, and you're gonna position it with this facing inward. There's not a specific right and left. When you put it up in here, you're gonna line up the bolts, and it's gonna kind of index in there, and it'll lock into place on there. All right, and then these bolts get torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. You just go back and forth confirming everything. All right, so now we're getting to the step that I hate to do. We're gonna do the brake line. So with your brake line, you got a banjo bolt, a couple of washers. Make sure everything's clean and clear and there's no burrs or anything on there. You're gonna pop that guy in there like this. You're gonna kind of pre-assemble it. We're gonna come here to the back side of the caliper. We're gonna remove this plug here. Be careful when you're putting that in. You don't want to cross thread it. We're going to kind of simulate how we're going to be running this brake line up here up top. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to keep that brake line kind of in here inside of the caliper. We don't want it out like this, and we don't want it too far in like that. So you want to just kind of sit like this. Hold your banjo fitting in place, keeping it trained in that area, and then torque it down to 15 foot-pounds. And that's it. Okay, so those copper washers are gonna crush down. That's where you're gonna get your seal. And then we're gonna inspect this when we go to bleed the brakes. So here's my least favorite part of this whole mess, because you're gonna make a little bit of a mess with your brake line. We're gonna pull this guy off. So what's unique about this is the factory line, this nut that we're gonna loosen up is actually attached to the hose here. So what we're gonna do is after we loosen it up, we're gonna need to pull this off, rotate the whole caliper and get it out. Now the good news is when we go to put on the new one, the line that we're supplying you has a nut that's typical to like a brake line, and it's gonna thread in, and we're gonna be able to thread it down without having to spin the whole caliper assembly. So you just wanna be careful. This brake fluid is very, very corrosive. After we're done, we're gonna clean it all off fairly quick. So now I'm gonna take a 17. I'm leaving it installed on this bracket. Okay, broken loose. We're gonna unhook the caliper. We're gonna get it out of the way. I'm supporting the caliper with my right arm and hand. And we're gonna put that right on the ground, and then we're gonna set this up in here and thread that in as quickly as possible. Okay. All right, so I've sealed it up pretty quick. Make sure you clean off everything as quick as possible. You don't want a big mess. We did pretty good here, but let's go ahead and clean it up real fast. And then we'll bolt that thing down and then tighten it down. I did snug it down fairly tight, so it shouldn't any brake fluid come out. Get the caliper up off the floor so it doesn't make a mess on the floor any more than it has. And if you just let the hose sit up like that, you'll be fine. It shouldn't drain out anymore. So we did surprisingly well. Not much of a mess. I'm gonna put in those two small bolts on top. So it's a T25 bolt. There's two of them. We're just going to snug those down. They do not need to be overly tight. And our next step is to tighten down this brake line here. I don't have a torque spec for this, but you'll get a feel for it. It actually, you can kind of feel like it's compressing and crushing inside there a little bit, but don't over tighten this guy. And we should be sealed up. So right now, we're just gonna button up a few other things here. We'll go over that. And this side's done. Last step will be bleeding the brakes, and we'll do the driver's side. Driver's side has one more step in it, but it's pretty much all these same steps for the addition that we're gonna remove the brake wear sensor. So let's finish up here. I'll show you this, and then we'll go to do the other side. That side should be a lot easier for you because you've done this. So I would recommend you do the passenger side first. It's pretty basic, and then when you go to do the driver's side, you got it down. And then you just have that one extra step. So you see up here, Just clip these guys in. It's almost like these guys knew about these fittings on there. Good to go. Let's go do the driver's side. Okay, driver's side, we're just gonna do the same thing we did on the passenger side. Gonna remove this part here. Should be a little bit quicker when you're doing the driver's side because you've already done the passenger side and you know all the shortcuts. So what's going to be different on the driver's side is we're going to pull, this is the wear sensor for the brake pad. When we pull this assembly out of the way, the wheel speed sensor needs to stay with the hub, and the caliper and all this mess needs to go over here. We'll hang it out of the way. But just make sure you isolate this wire away from everything. And then we're going to remove the 221s here, sneak that through, hang the caliper. All right, so then a rotor comes off, we clean it. We're gonna mount on our caliper bracket, we're gonna clean that, we're gonna torque all that stuff down. Interesting, on this side I got a little bit of paint on there, on the edges, not much, but make sure to clean that off. All that stuff that's underneath there wants to move around and can cause things to loosen up. Probably unlikely, but always better to be safe than sorry. When the caliper adapter goes on, you're gonna see one side that says disc. That faces out. It will go on both ways. Not that I've figured that out, but I figured it out. These bolts get torqued down to 120. Okay, time to bolt on the caliper. Remember, that's gonna kind of open up and it's gonna index in there when you got it seated flat. Okay, again, my favorite part, starting to do the brake line. So pull out your cap, assemble your banjo bolt with the copper washer on either side of the banjo fitting. Set this in here, thread it in by hand. Should go in nice and easy. And then we're gonna torque that down to 15 foot-pounds. So set your torque wrench, hold the banjo from pivoting. You're gonna wanna have it going a kind of an arch like this. You don't want it sticking out like that. You want it like this. We're gonna do the brake line and we're gonna take off the brake wear sensor, get it out of the way. I will just be dealing with the brake line. I'll take off this brake wear sensor wire and get it completely out of the way. I'm gonna use this little panel popper and pop this guy out there and that additional one there. Disassemble that like that. And we're gonna continue to take it off here at the brake caliper. So just depress that and we'll eliminate this wire altogether. Now, you can set this in your toolbox. We're not gonna be reusing this part. Okay, so we're breaking this loose. I'm just gonna break it loose. Use your hands between the two wrenches. So now comes that fun part. Remember, this hose doesn't swivel on that fitting, and that fitting doesn't swivel on that hose. We gotta unspool the whole thing. made a little bit more of a mess on this side than the other. You would have thought I would have gotten better at it. Instead, I got worse. So remember to clean off all of that corrosive brake fluid. Get in all the nooks and crannies and stuff. We don't want to have a problem with it. Usually what it does, it just tears at the paint. I've got it seated in there again, and then we're just going to tighten down these two little bolts on here, give that a crank tight, and then finish buttoning this up. So we'll be done here in a jiffy. Now remember, we don't have a torque spec for this, but as you tighten it down, you'll kind of feel a little bit of a compression in there. Not a whole ton, but just enough, and you're done. So now when you put all that back together, remember you're going to be missing one of these slots where the brake pad wear sensor is absent. So just cinch up everything, and then let's go to the bench. I'll show you how we're gonna actually just cut the end off of the brake pad, and we're going to plug it in up here and tie it off up here. So we don't need to add that wire down here to nowhere. We've got the calipers and the rotors installed. The last thing we need to do is remove this connector off of the brake pad. It's the brake pad wear sensor. So what I do is I just come in here, pull that wire out. We're gonna expose, yep, a 4mm. There's not many hex heads on the old INEOS, but when they are, they're usually 4 and 5mm. So we'll pull that guy out. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna cut this. I cut it down about right here. We're gonna strip these wires, and then we're gonna connect them with the butt connector. So you'll have to take care of that. This piece then will get installed on top, and you'll zip tie it in place. The struggle is real, my friends. So we finally got the wires stripped. What I do is I put them together like this, cut them, put that on there. We're gonna crimp it and put shrink wrap over it. Then I take that factory piece and leave it a little bit longer on one side, put it back in there, and put it into there, and then we're just gonna basically clip that back in, and we're gonna zip tie it in place up top. So let's go do that, and we'll be all done. So remember what we had up there? That's where you remove your wire. So we're just taking the part from the sensor. We're completing that circuit up here. Now it's just bleed the brakes. So for bleeding the brakes, we use the AGM toolkit. Works really, really well. They've got a good set of instructions on their website. You know, they got some YouTube clips on there that show you how to do it. It works exceptionally well. It puts the pressure through the mass cylinder and bleeds the brakes out. So the last thing you're going to be doing after you've mounted your tires or mounted your wheels, it's important that you check that they fit. All the factory wheels that we have checked from INEOS clear these rotors and calipers. Most of the aftermarket wheels that we picked clear them. And by most, for sure, the Agile wheels clear, both the XT and the HD. Those are for sure fit. A lot of the wheels, like the Method wheels, have fit. We haven't checked all of them. There's a few of the newer styles where they kind of started creating a problem. So where you want to check is this portion of the rotor. You can see it's really, really tight. And when we've talked to Alcon, we've asked them, how much room do you need? They go, does it clear? And we say, yes, it does. They go, run it. So you can see we're pretty dang close in here. The other thing you want to check is whoever balance your wheels, they got to make sure that they're not hitting on the inside. So you can see where you don't want this brake line too far out this way, and you don't want it like pointing out this direction. So you see how we just had it flow over the top. Another big advantage that you're going to see with the Alcon calipers, there's no external crossover line. So we're not crossing fluid from this side to the other side via a metal line which is exposed out here. An exposed metal line you really do not want in an off-road vehicle. Guys that are balancing the wheels, they put the weights right in here, and that may become a problem. So just go in, and rotate the wheel all the way around. Here's our weights there. They're actually clearing, but these are pretty dang close in there. So I'll have the guys double check this for me. And then let's look at the other side. Make sure everything clears nice and tight. You wanna make sure this brake hose isn't coming out here, hitting on the wheel weight's there, and see they're clearing. Now, if you're running the factory steel wheels, those have the weights on the inside and the outside. We haven't seen an issue with any of the factory wheels the way that they hit. Make sure that when you're inspecting everything, that you're actually inspecting your joints where the hose is connected and the banjo fitting for any leaks. Now, we bled these, but we haven't driven this. So once we drive it, we're gonna drive a lot more pressure into this. The system's been bled, everything looks really good. We're gonna go and test drive the vehicle. We're gonna bed the brakes in, confirm brakes are doing well. It seems like they're working really well. I pumped the brakes a few times in there. I have developed pressure, but once we get some heat in them, things might move around. But you wanna keep an eye on your fittings. You're gonna inspect them before you get on your drive, once you're back. And if you need to, you may have to re-bleed the brakes when you return. If you get like a soft pedal or something like that, you might have got a little bit of air in the line, but that will just come with after your first test drive. So let's get this thing down, make sure the wheels are torqued, and get on a test drive. All right, so we're going for a first test drive. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that your brakes feel good, that you've got pressure in there. You can generally pump your brakes, feel pressure. We don't want to use the brakes too hard right off the bat. Once we get up to speed, we're going to use them hard several times. So the idea behind bedding the brakes is get everything kind of tempered and cleaned up. So the rotors are shipped to you and they come with almost like a paint on the surface. You're going to basically burn all that off the first few times you use your brakes. So ideally what we want to do is get it to about 60 kilometers to 100 kilometers. So you know 100 kilometers is 60 miles an hour. So probably between 40 and 60, we want to get up to that speed, and then we want to reduce our speed down to about 25 without stopping. We want to do that about 4 times fairly aggressively. So we've got a nice spot out here by the shop where we can do that. So let's do that. In the instructions that you get, Alcon is going to walk you through the bedding process. You can read up on it. It's one paragraph. It's pretty simple, but they do tell you it's going to take roughly about 10 times to get that bedding process really seated in. We'll do it maybe once or twice here at this end, so we'll get anywhere from 8 to 10 times in, but a lot of that will just happen when you're driving it normal. So let's go on first test drive. I'm gonna get up to speed here, about roughly 50, 60 miles an hour, and then I'm gonna apply brakes pretty aggressively. We're gonna go down to about 25, and we're gonna get back up to speed pretty aggressively. And then we're gonna go down to 25. Now remember, don't stop. I'm gonna have to stop this stop sign up here, then we'll get onto the freeway and we'll do something similar again. One more lap as we do this on this frontage road. And it seems to work pretty well for clearing everything off. Already the brakes feel really good. Pedal's a little soft. That's primarily because everything's new. We're just breaking them in. We want that bedding process to happen. The brake actually starts getting harder and harder the more you drive it. And again, Alcon tells you about 10 to 12 times, I believe. And you'll start feeling the brake get better and better. So we're at 60 miles an hour here, and we'll stop down to that 25, not stop, and I'm gonna continue. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do one more thing like this. We're gonna go back to the shop, let it cool down, and then we're gonna do it one more time. So we're gonna get about 8 in on this time, and probably about 8 the next time. So remember, when you're doing this break-in procedure, you want to make sure that you're in a safe environment. You're always doing something in an area where it's legal to do the speeds that you're doing, being careful with the people behind you and being considerate to people. Again, we're never really stopping when we're doing this. We're just kind of like accelerating, decelerating, accelerating, decelerating. We're wearing things in, we're putting some heat in these components. And the one thing I can tell you about the Alcon components, they like heat. So once these things get bedded in, the harder you use them, they actually really start working harder than you would think. They really enjoy the heat and work much better. And then when I'm coming to a stop, I'm not slamming on the brakes. I'm not wanting to like just cram everything on unless I need to. I would definitely have brakes. So just in the short drive we've done, I've already felt a significant difference in the pedal. It feels more solid. We'll get back to the shop and we will inspect everything. I'm not concerned about leaks because the pedal feels really nice and hard, but of course we're going to look for all that. Inspect the wheel weights, just look for any witness marks of anything on there. Obviously we did that before rolling out, but always a good idea to just double check yourself when you get back. If you're a car guy, this install is not bad. If it was me, I'd do this in my driveway. I'm not afraid of doing brakes on a vehicle. If you're that kind of a person, you're a car guy, I think you'll enjoy doing these brakes. If you're not, take them to a shop. We've got authorized dealers all over the US as well. We're here in Santee. The shop's always able to do it, and we'll get you taken care of. All right, so second bedding process is complete. We're signed off on this Grenadier. The brakes are substantially better. It's a significant improvement. I feel the front end diving a little bit more on the street. I feel more confident. And I do have a tendency to be an aggressive street driver, which probably isn't the best thing for me, but I feel much more confident driving the Grenadier. You know, last minute decisions, things like that, or if somebody's cutting me off, I feel really confident driving this vehicle. Off-road, the biggest improvement I see in this thing off-road is low speed braking. When I'm dropping down a hill and I need to use the brakes, factory brakes do work, but they're really kind of not working, the vehicle's rolling, then all of a sudden it goes from rolling to just locked up and stopped. It seems like it has a big gap in there in the feel. For me, when I'm needing it in a real tricky situation, it feels really good. Low speed braking, real good. High speed braking, you know, for me, I love it. You're going down into the desert, you're doing it a long downhill, and you kind of want to, you know, get after it a little bit. The brakes work real well. So these brakes are for somebody that wants an aggressive off-road and on-road brake, or if you're towing a trailer. We've got iron calipers. We've got no crossover tube. They're built for off-road, they're built for heavy duty, and this is what you want. For me, the Alcons, they're top notch. I have them on all of my vehicles. I'm a mechanical person. I've always wanted these brakes. So Alcon, way to go. Fit great. They fit all of our wheels, they fit the factory wheels, they fit most of the aftermarket wheels. If you have a question about a special wheel you've got, you could always ship us a wheel if it was that big of a deal, and we could bolt it onto the vehicle and make sure they fit. I can see myself installing these in the driveway. It's fun. You know, here at the shop, we got all the tools. It's even funner when you have all the tools and you have this great shop and all that. But I am a car guy. You want to have the pros do it, see us, or go to one of our dealers. So everybody, thanks and happy trails.